Fitzgerald Square here in Newtown, Johannesburg, where the march to the Constitutional Court is expected to start. Let's join her now. Very good morning to you, Griselda, and welcome. Can you tell us what is the situation like there this morning? Have people started gathering?
Well, that's right, Elvis. From as early as 7 o'clock this morning, opposition members and supporters had already started arriving here at the Mary Fitzgerald Square. The pictures that you are seeing now of some of those supporters and members, as well as ordinary South Africans who are urged to come here and support this march to the Constitutional Court. Number one, calling for President Jacob Zuma to resign, and also asking the ConCourt to compel the National Assembly Speaker Baleka Mbete to conduct that no confidence vote against President Jacob Zuma through a secret ballot. Well, that march is expected to start any minute now, as we wait for more members of the opposition parties to arrive here. But of course, we're expecting the arguments in the Constitutional Court, of course, from the UDM, as you indicated, to really argue that, ANC members have been threatened, members of parliament have been threatened as a result of the motion that they are now asking the Constitutional Court to rule on whether a secret ballot will go ahead in the National Assembly when this motion does get heard. And of course, President Jacob Zuma, in the papers that he has filed, saying that there's no merit or basis for this application to be heard, because they believe that the open vote itself is not unconstitutional. And the National Assembly Speaker as well, Baleka Mbete, saying that there is no basis at this point, given the fact that, for example, you have a jurisdiction in terms of what she can do, that the Constitution and the rules of the National Assembly do not make provision for a secret ballot. Let's join now very quickly the UDM MP, was also going to be part of this march here this morning. Mr. Nkwankwa, thank you very much for your time this morning. A very important day for the UDM, and I guess for other opposition parties as well, asking the Constitutional Court to compel the National Assembly to have this secret ballot when this vote of no confidence sits in Parliament. Yes,
certainly. I think it's an important day, not only for us as sister opposition parties, but I think it's an important day for South Africa as a whole. Because remember, really what we're trying to do as a party and as an opposition collective is to say, effectively, South Africa needs to find itself. For an example, what we've been saying over the past few weeks is that not only do we find ourselves in a situation where we need to look for our road as a country, but we also need to look for a direction, as to say, where do we take the country from here? So we're saying this Constitutional Court process, without putting pressure on the Constitutional Court judges, but we feel that they also have a moral obligation to lead the country, to help to get the country out of this quagmire, by at the very least saying to Parliament that we need to do something about the discretionary powers that the Speaker has, and so far as being able to decide whether a vote can be conducted on a secret ballot or not.
In terms of the papers that were filed, the National Assembly Speaker does indicate, saying that the rules, there's no rules within the National Assembly or the Constitution, neither does that provide for a secret ballot when it comes to a vote of no confidence. What are the main arguments that the UDM's lawyers will be putting through to the Constitutional Court to try perhaps and get this successful?
Look, without preempting the Constitutional Court process once more, I think we've made it clear, for an example, that the Speaker, who also admitted in the papers that she does have some discretionary powers to make that decision, we need to force her to make that decision, firstly via the Constitutional Court process. But the second matter is that even though the rules do not state it explicitly, that you can use a secret ballot via motion of no confidence, but if you elect the very same president via secret ballot, then it's only logical and proper that you can also remove him via secret ballot should the need arise. For an example, I mean, you've seen over the past few weeks, ever since we started with this Constitutional Court process, that a lot of people have been intimidated, there have been threats on people's lives. So you can't put their lives at risk by saying vote in favor of a motion if either they are going to be removed from Parliament or they are going to lose their lives or might lose their lives by doing so.
I want to come to exactly that, the threats of intimidation and death threats. Publicly, ANC MP Makosi Khoza has come out and said, since she's spoken out and supported a secret ballot, that perhaps do you think other ANC MPs, part of the reason why you're doing this is to call on ANC MPs to vote with their so-called conscience to get rid of President Jacob Zuma. Do you think there is enough will, though, within the ANC in terms of the members of parliament to vote with you as opposition members to get rid of President Jacob Zuma?
Well, yes, now there is a lot of will from our ANC MPs, the colleagues. I mean, as ordinary members of parliament, we've been interacting on this issue. We do find that there's a groundswell of discontent in the ANC against President Zuma, and they would like to make sure that they use the secret ballot process as one of the ways of expressing that discontent. We are providing them an opportunity to therefore do that using the secret ballot. But at the same time, I think the issue is that now they need to be true to the Constitution. Remember, when you take your oath of office, you do so in terms of Section 48 of the Constitution, and you swear and affirm allegiance to the Constitution of the Republic and its people. Now it means that we have to put South Africa first and forget about our own political parties at this point in time.
But some analysts would perhaps say that, we saw President Jacob Zuma come under much scrutiny over the cabinet reshuffle. Yes, there has been public dissent amongst some ANC members with regard to the recent decisions that President Jacob Zuma has made. But President Jacob Zuma just yesterday also indicating that he will not step down unless his party says he should. Now, other opposition parties have said they do not see that will coming from within the ANC. It had the opportunity to get rid of President Jacob Zuma, but it did not. Do you think perhaps that, the dissent that we've seen with the African National Congress may not necessarily translate to ANC MPs voting with you? Because some would say perhaps, the members of parliament would want the ANC internally to deal with President Jacob Zuma.
The ANC has tried on numerous occasions to deal with President Zuma internally, and it has failed dismally. We must face that fact. I think the president of the country, or the ANC rather, not of the country, Zuma, still enjoys a lot of support in the ANC NEC. But I think the political dynamics are slightly different in parliament. It is up to the ANC if they want to do that. They want to give more time to President Zuma to continue to politically amputate the African National Congress. That's entirely up to them. We'll see them at the ballot box in 2019. But what we're saying is that we cannot allow President Zuma to lead us for another 2 years. It would be disastrous. So we're giving them an opportunity to say, put South Africa first, remove President Zuma, so that we can then begin the process of trying to rebuild the country.
We've also seen other opposition parties say they were wooing ANC MPs to vote with opposition parties on the day that the vote of no confidence does come. Have you also been involved in that process?
Yes, of course. As I think all sister opposition parties are involved in that. You do it informally, not formally. For example, what we have been doing from the UDM side is to focus mainly on those MPs, ordinary MPs who are not members of the executive, because we find that in many instances the members of the executive are conflicted, because they know that if you remove President Zuma, it means you've also removed them as well, so they lose all the benefits and perks of being members of the executive. So our focus so far has been on ordinary MPs, and we're going to continue to do so until this matter is debated in Parliament and the secret ballot is used.
The UDM MP, thank you very much for your time. Certainly the UDM hoping for some success at the Constitutional Court this morning, as those arguments are expected to get underway. Of course, they're the UDM bringing that application, wanting the Constitutional Court to compel the National Assembly Speaker, Baleka Mbete, to have that no confidence vote against President Jacob Zuma held in secret ballot, saying that would perhaps provide an opportunity for ANC MPs to vote with their conscience against President Jacob Zuma to get him removed. Let's cross now to my colleague Aldrin Sampier, who is at the Constitutional Court where those hearings will take place. Aldrin?
Well, actually, the leader of the UDM, Bantu Holomisa, is actually inside the courtroom ahead of today's heads of arguments that will be heard here at the Constitutional Court. Of course, quite an interesting case on both fronts. Quite interesting that you'll have the heads of all arms of the state. This is now the executive, being the president being represented by his council, as well as the Speaker of Parliament, also represented by a council. But also you'll have Chief Justice Mogoeng also part of this case. case, or rather listening in or hearing in on this court application being brought by the UDM. So quite an interesting times that South Africa finds himself in terms of our democracy. Of course, what is at the center of the UDM's court application is to have the vote of no confidence against President Jacob Zuma to be done in secret. And they base this argument on what they call intimidation as well as death threats against ANC MPs, who some believe are ANC MPs who will vote against President Jacob Zuma, who will support the UDM as well as the DA and the EFF's motion of no confidence debate in Parliament, and they will vote with them to get President Jacob Zuma removed as the president of the country. But what we should do is also, when you read section 102 of the Constitution, where it speaks about the removal of the president through a motion of no confidence, is that it says that once the president is being removed through a motion of no confidence, it also means that the cabinet members as well as all deputy ministers must resign. So this will have a huge impact in terms of the executive, because not only would the president have to resign, but the entire cabinet, the entire executive as well, will have to step down. That would obviously mean that we'll be in for a reshuffle. That is, if the UDM as well as the opposition parties are lucky, or are successful rather, in making their arguments, and also successful in the motion of no confidence against President Jacob Zuma. Something quite interesting as well is that while the ANC has been cited as a respondent in this matter, it has decided not to file court papers. However, though, President Jacob Zuma in his court application introduces himself as the president of the country as well as the president of the ANC, also making the arguments around when party members do not toe the line. There are provisions within the ANC's constitution that those party members must be disciplined, and that cannot be seen to be a form of intimidation. He says it's not the ANC's constitution that's being tested here at during this court application, but rather the issue around the motion of no confidence against the president being done in secret. The president says that the constitution as it stands at the moment doesn't have any provision for that, while the UDM says that if you read section 102 of the Constitution, it says that the president can be removed by quote-unquote by a vote. It doesn't say whether it is a secret vote or a closed vote. Something else as well is that President Jacob Zuma, in his heads of argument, said that the likes of Cyril Ramaphosa, the deputy president of the ANC, as well as Gwede Mantashe, the secretary general of the ANC, have decided, have rather publicly apologized for speaking out against President Jacob Zuma's decision to reshuffle cabinet. We've heard subsequently that Gwede Mantashe has said that that is not the case. So we'll have to wait and see whether the council representing the president will actually retract that statement, because they've said it in the heads of arguments that these two ANC members have made public apologies, and Gwede Mantashe saying that that is not the case. Even Derek Hanekom, who was part of the ANC's National Working Committee's extended meeting after the cabinet reshuffle, says that there was no apology asked from anyone, and there was no apology made. So the question around whether an apology was given is false at this point. So we'll have to wait and see whether the council of the president will retract this. Something that was interesting, that was just raised by someone on Twitter, is if you look into the facts that the ANC has decided not to file in this court application. However, though, President Jacob Zuma filing both as president of the country as well as president of the ANC, the question then is, who must foot the bill? Who must foot the legal bill? Because the taxpayer cannot be expected to foot the bill of the ANC when arguments are being advanced in the interest of the ANC. While President Jacob Zuma, as being the president of the country, of course, if he filed in his capacity as the president of the country, it is expected that the taxpayers would foot the bill. However, when he advances arguments on behalf of the ANC, it must be the ANC that foots that bill. So quite an interesting take on the events that will be unfolding this morning here at the Constitutional Court.
That's our reporter there, Eldrin Sampear from the Constitutional Court. We'll bring you an update on that story as it unfolds, as the march progresses to the Constitutional Court later.